Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Pinstriped Prospects Podcast, episode 8 of season number 2. Hope you're all staying safe through this difficult time. I'm one of your hosts, Ricky Keel. We got a great show coming up for you today. We're going to get into our minor league positional review series again. We're going to talk about some catchers, which I think is a real interesting position in the Yankees organization, so we'll get into that. We'll update our Yankees Prospect Madness. Yes, the Yankee Prospect Madness tournament is going. We're almost done with the first round. We have most of the second round already set up, and we're going to preview some of those matchups in the second round, some pretty good ones too. And then we're going to do a little bit of somewhat season preview when hopefully the season gets started soon. We'll do a little top 5 Yankees with the most to prove in 2020. We'll just bounce some names off and see what sticks. We want to remind you, you can get involved with the show at any time, and we want to hear from you. We want to know what you want us to talk about while you're stuck at home trying to figure out what you're going to watch, what sports you're going to watch, if any, maybe what reruns you're watching. Feel free to share with us at Twitter, at Pinstripe Pros on Twitter, excuse me. You can like us on Facebook, just search Pinstripe Prospects, follow us on Instagram. You can call into our voicemail number, 908-376-6360. Again, it's 908-376-6360. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Please feel free to give a rating. We like it to be 5 stars, but we want to hear from you some feedback. What do you like? What you don't like? What segments you want us to talk about? What guests you want on? We want to hear from you. So subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Most likely Pinstripe Prospects is on there. So please subscribe today. I want to bring in my good buddy James O'Connell back to the show. James, how you holding up, my friend?
Boy, out of my goddamn mind, Ricky. How about yourself?
You know, I've been trying to I think MLB Network's done a good job with all these reruns that have been on. I don't know if you Yankee fan, you should have watched Game 5, the '95 ALDS, but that was on, so I caught a little bit of that because I was 3 when that was played. So I was at least I totally don't know the specifics of it. But besides that, there was a NASCAR iRace, and I thought that was pretty cool. But other than that, it's been bleh.
Yeah, I've been trying to stay away kind of from the baseball reruns because it's so depressing. Thinking we should be getting ready for opening day this week, Thursday or tomorrow, depends on whenever you're listening to this.
Well,
so I'm kind of staying away from it.
Look at the bright side. You could be a Met fan today.
I mean, from what the Met fans have experienced today, we as Yankees people have experienced over the course of the last 365 days. So I don't feel the least bit mad or least bit bad for Met fans here because we just went through the same thing with Luis Severino here, and 95% of the roster as well. So it's unfortunate for you guys, but this is 7 hour shoes for a second. Well, yeah, hold on. Actually, I'm going to spin it positively. We should have a full roster here for opening day.
That's what I was going to say.
In 2025 or whenever, so we should have a full roster.
Everybody would be healthy and ready to go, most likely.
Mm-hmm. By the time even Aaron Hicks should be ready to go. You come up with Tommy John surgery, depending on, because if I remember last year, Didi came back in May, right? Recovering from Tommy John. So
May or June, yeah.
I think it was May against the Indians, if I'm correct. Okay. I remember it was in Cleveland. Who's your daddy, Corey Kluber, Didi Gregorius? Yep, that was one. Remember that he just dominates Corey Kluber.
Gotcha.
I remember. So he came back in May. So Aaron Hicks might be back for opening day here because it doesn't sound like we're getting one at least until May. I don't want to be too negative here, but it's May would be best case scenario at this point, right?
Well, yeah, I think also to move it to generic baseball for a second, then we'll get into Yankee specific. If you're the Mets and Syndergaard, you can say is back in April, May 21, then you're looking like you're only missing 80 games really. So you're getting it's bad news, but at the same time, it's weird. Even with Sale needing Tommy John,
right?
It might not be as many games as
right. But I guess it depends how you look at it. A lost season is a lost season regardless of the amount of games played. No Syndergaard is going to have zero effect on the 2020 MLB season, regardless of 162 games, 80 games. I guess you can look at it optimistically, but if you make the postseason, what does those other 80 games even really mean? All that matters despite the 162 game schedule, is those however many games in October. So no matter how you slice it up, Noah Syndergaard, Luis Severino, Chris Sale, these guys are not going to be any part of baseball in 2020, which it will be detrimental. Well, not so much detrimental for the Yankees. Again, I think we discussed that, but like for the Mets, for the Red Sox, those are two guys that just simply cannot afford to lose.
Yeah, you know what that news brought up to me today? Opening day should be Thursday. It's making me sad.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I
I would have
told
been
you. That's
so
why I'm staying
excited
away
for
from these
Thursday.
freaking reruns, man.
Garrett Cole in Baltimore.
Yeah, like
Glaber
on my
hitting
birthday
2
too.
home runs
Nonetheless,
again.
my birthday's March 26th, and that
Oh,
would have been that was opening day. You imagine, you know how long I had that circle on my calendar. But you know what? I'm willing to make the sacrifice for the Yankees to be healthy.
should have
I'm willing
gone
to do
down
it.
to Baltimore, had some crab cakes.
Oh yeah, love those Maryland crab cakes. Unbelievable. Uh-huh.
So let's get a little bit in the minor league review. We'll get into the major league stuff. Of course, the more Aaron Judge news we'll get into later. But this week for our minor league review, we've touched on third base. We've touched on left-handed pitchers in the past. Today we're going to go to the backstop. We're going to go do some catchers. And, of course, Gary Sanchez has the major league job at catcher and should be the foreseeable future. And, James, we talked about some of the Yankees non-roster invitees, the Eric Kratz, the Chris Ionettas of the world. Really, the Yankees catching system, if you want to go for their top guys, you have to go to the lower levels and those guys can at least put some pressure on Sanchez down the road if maybe the Yankees organization starts to wane from Sanchez, although it doesn't seem that way. But the guys at the top of the catching pool still have a good 3, maybe even 4 years away from being an impact at the major league level.
Yeah, so the two catchers that kind of have my eye, Anthony Siegler and Josh Burrow, really should have everyone's eye here because you could kind of see where they would be on a major league major league roster. Because Siegler, man, I think we spoke about it before. He's just an athlete. Like you can have really no doubt that he's not going to be a Gary Sanchez type where that ball's going to go to the backstop. The dude's just a complete athlete. He struggles behind the plate. He struggles kind of in the box. And I know Rob mentioned previously that he has this little injury history there. He only played 54 games in 2 seasons, which is not ideal. And then you head over to Josh Burrow. Dude's got pop. But like we said before, he has defensive questions. Will he remain behind the plate? Will he move to a corner position? But when you look at his stats, we got 13 home runs in 51 games last year. That's power, man. A 518 slugging percentage, 842 OPS. I mean, that is legitimate raw power. And the Yankees, more so than a lot of teams in baseball, know how to develop raw power. So those are kind of two guys that I look at when you're talking about catching in the minor league system.
Anthony Siegler, I think, if and when 2020 gets underway, I think out of the two of them, between him and Bro, he might have the most pressure, so to speak. But at the same time, I don't think we've seen enough of Siegler to fully evaluate because even in 2018, it was right after he got drafted. You're not going to get in as many games anyway. So getting only 24 games is not as big a deal, I think, as compared to playing only 30 games last year. The average isn't good, as you mentioned. He did have 20 walks in 30 games, so at least he was seeing pitches well. And I think that's a good sign for a young hitter. It's something that's hard to teach. So I think he's got that going for him. I think out of the two, he's a better defensive catcher. And Josh Burrow's definitely, I think, got more of the power. I remember watching him in Staten Island, getting to see a little bit of him in 2018. The power's there, the gap power's there especially. He's a guy that can for extra bases very easily. I think the key down the road is, will he be behind the plate going forward? But if you're looking for an offensive catcher, Josh Burrow kind of fits the mold better than Siegler does. But Siegler, like you mentioned, I think he can be the better defensive catcher for comparing the two.
There's always a spot for a good defensive catcher, whether that be a backup, or that be just anything in general. There's always guys. People carry personal catchers nowadays. Chris Sale's personal catcher was Sandy Leone. He couldn't hit the side of a barn. Mm-hmm. So it's, there's always a spot for a good defensive catcher. And Anthony Siegler can kind of establish himself as a good defensive catcher. There's going to be a home for him somewhere, whether that be with the Yankees or somewhere else. So he I guess, what you would think would be the safest bet to not only remain behind the plate, but eventually get up to that major league level, given that he's former first rounder and just defensively speaking.
Other than Siegel and Bro, I think you look down the list, and it's really not names that are going to wow you, but look at Donnie Sands, was an 8th-round pick in 2015. He was converted to being a catcher, but he's another guy that I think just had problems staying on the field. Last year with High A Tampa, only got in 68 games, hit just 221 with 2 homers and 22 RBI. So the offensive numbers aren't going to wow you there. And another guy to look at is Jason Lopez, who spent all of last season at High A Tampa as well, but only hit 209, 4 homers, 25 RBI. He got 13 games, cup of coffee with Tampa in 2018. Didn't really fare well either. So the bat, again, leaves a lot to be desired as well. So that's where I think Siegel and Bro stand out at being the cream of the crop, because you look at the gap between them, both at the upper levels and lower levels, is surprising in a way.
Yeah, so there's, again, we kind of, a lot of the Yankees position players remain, talking about prospects, they're kind of a little top heavy. Like, at least from what we've spoken about thus far, not pitchers, we know just how deep they are, but it's either top heavy or they're really just lacking. So I'm not all that optimistic for just the overall view of position players in the Yankee system. I don't know how you feel about that.
It's not really the best position in terms, at least of an offensive perspective. And I'll throw another guy out there, a guy like Sol Torres, who last season had 8 home runs at Pulaski, tied for second most on the team with Madison Santos and Ryder Green. So at least Torres, the guy who only got into 48 games last year and showed a little bit of pop, I think that's a good sign. But he's going to be is 21 years old, and he's only at rookie ball. So he's been in the system for a little bit. So I think just the position group as a whole, and we're going to get into differences. We got into first base a little bit as well. It's really something that I think the Yankees, like we talked about, their strength in their farm system is really the intriguing pitchers that are on the staff. And it's going to take a little bit for position players to develop, or maybe if there is a draft, the Yankees focus position player-wise in the draft to kind of boost that crop going forward.
It's not a terrible problem to have where you have so many talented arms and it kind of overshadows where you're at elsewhere. So I'm not upset about it. And when you really think about it, catching the catchers the Yankees have in the system are going to play a large role in developing those young arms too. So it's a position the Yankees have to address if they don't feel comfortable about it. But I think they have, 2 relatively decent guys or prospects in general with Siegler and Bro.
And that's where Bro, I think, is going to get the first shot, because you would think Bro would start the year with the High A Tampa Tarpons, and as Rob Pinstriped talked about on the show, Tampa's got the most intriguing rotation.
Yeah.
And I think he'll get that first crack. Siegler, you'd think, would go to Charleston to start off with just to get some games in. But it'd be interesting to see if they would both split time if they made it to the same level. I've always been wondering, when the Yankees took them back-to-back in the draft a couple years ago, how that would work.
Yeah, I actually remember that draft. Obviously, it wasn't all that long ago. And that was kind of in the middle of Gary Sanchez's struggles, if I remember correctly. Like, everyone was like, oh, my God. Like, they just took 2 catchers back-to-back in the first round. And it kind of just, everyone was, any chance they get the rag on Gary Sanchez and jump on it. So, yeah, that draft I remember. But 2 very different prospects of Siegler and Bro. One you got the bat, one you got the glove. Let's see what they make of them.
And each week we're going to put up a different position to vote on. We'll give you a list of 4, and go to the Pinstripe Prospects Twitter page, again, at Pinstripe Pros, and you can vote on which position we talk about. So that's a way that you can get involved with the show. We want to remind you that Pinstripe Prospects provides exclusive minor league content to paid subscribers with our new Dugout membership program. You get scouting reports, player interviews, features. We'll have an interview that will only be available to the Dugout subscribers coming up, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. You can sign up today for our Dugout membership programs. We have options for $7 a month or $63 a year. So you have different ways you can subscribe. We would love you to be a part of the Dugout membership team. So let's get into Yankees Prospect Madness. We almost have the whole first round in the books. We'll have the final 2 matchups up on Twitter on Wednesday in the Rodman region. We're going to remind you what those matchups are you can vote on. It's the 3-seed Blake Rutherford against the 6-seed Slade Heathcott, and the 4-seed Clint Frazier against the 5-seed Domingo Acevedo. You might have seen the bracket up on the site about a week ago. It we had to make some changes to it a little bit just to reflect the seeding purposes, so we apologize for that. But when you next see the bracket, it'll be updated in its truest form. I have the results here, James, of the first round so far, and if you go off the NCAA tournament, it's pretty predictable. We didn't really have that big surprise in terms of that big upset. Really, the only upset we could mention was Jason Dominguez, the 6th seed in the Oppenheimer region, upset Davey Garcia in the 3, and then you had James Caprilli in the 5 seed, edging out Jorge Mateo, who was the 4 seed. So those are the only 2 lower seeds right now that have advanced. So far it's been mostly chalk in the Pinstripe Prospect Madness bracket.
The one, I'm not surprised by the outcome of this one, obviously, because it's just the Luis Severino versus Manny Banuelos thing. I'm a little surprised that it wasn't at all close. And because I remember thinking Manny Banuelos was going to be this absolute freak of nature. And just the next Yankees ace. And given what's been going on, Luis Severino, I'm surprised it wasn't a tad bit closer. Like 91 to 9 is not close at all. So I thought that'd be a little closer. And another one that I thought would be a little closer is Roman versus Chance Adams. Chance Adams, I remember. I think everyone who was kind of in the loop knew kind of just what you were getting with Chance Adams, that this wasn't necessarily going to be a dominant arm, but he was still a pretty high prospect. And I get Roman was to his own degree, but I'd argue that Adams's status was as a prospect was higher than also Roman's.
Results from those upsets: Dominguez beat Davey Garcia 77.9 to 22.1, and Caprilli, I said, edged out Mateo 52.3 to 47.7 out of about 60 plus votes. That one came down in the final 2 minutes. It was really interesting. But I agree with you. I was surprised that Roman Adams wasn't closer, because I remember, like you said, the love that Chance Adams had as a prospect. So that one I thought could have been a little bit closer. But really, besides that, I think most things held to chalk. I think I was surprised that Tyler Wade was close with Esteban Florial. Florial said one, like, if you round it up, 54% to 46%. I was surprised Tyler Wade came pretty close.
I think this is more so of like there's some recency bias here. Don't let that fool you. When they're voting. So I guess you see that Florial is trending down here. You see that he may not be just the stud that everyone thought he'd be. And you saw Tyler Wade was trending upwards in spring training, at least, and this is a guy that people have seen on the major league roster. So I'm not really surprised that it was that close, just because of where they're both at the current moment in time.
So let's take a quick look at what matchups we know for the second round. So we have 6 of the 8 matchups. So we'll get into a little bit of that. Let's start in the Cashman region. Your top seed, Gleyber Torres, is going to take on the 4 seed, Austin Romine. And the 2 seed, Luis Severino, is going to take on the 3 seed, Java Chamberlain. So the second round of voting will start on Thursday. And those will probably be, if not both matchups, one of them at least will be on Thursday you can vote on. I like the Severino-Java matchup, James. I understand. I think Severino definitely has the edge. But you never know if those Java rules people are going to come back and make the voting a little bit closer.
Yeah, no, I of how highly touted Java was, but if Manny, and this is going to sound like a weird take, but I think if Manny Banuelos didn't come close to Luis Severino, I don't know how close Java Chamberlain will come. But like I get it's 2 very different scenarios. But if Banuelos is going to get over 9 or over 8.7% of the vote, I don't see the Java matchup being much closer than, I guess, 20%, 25%. I don't know. It depends how everyone votes. So that's kind of where I sit with that matchup.
I'm looking at Java's numbers, at least to start off with. Looking at 2007. I remember we were going off the last 10 to 15 years. So Java fits in this equation.
Right.
With High A Tampa, he had 51 strikeouts over 7 starts. With Trenton and Double A, he had 66 strikeouts in 8 games. In Scranton Wilkes-Barre, he had 3 appearances, 1 start, 18 strikeouts, only allowed 5 hits. That is an insane minor league season. 135 strikeouts and 88 in the 3rd innings and a 198 batting average against. That you could see.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Job was a stud, dude. Like in the minor leagues, I don't really. I mean, it was 2000. What years are we talking about here? 2007,
Just
2006,
2007, yeah.
2007. Yeah, like I forget how. I think I remember like 7 years old at that point, or whatever, or 9 years old at that point. So like I don't really remember just how highly talented he was, but like his numbers are freakish, and that whole Jabba rules thing. I remember to a certain degree that people were like freaking out about him, just like how talented they thought he was and all that stuff. So I don't know. I'm surprised. I'll be surprised to see where this matchup goes, I guess, because I don't think I understand the magnitude of the Jabba rules fan club, I guess.
So you would be shocked if you would be shocked if this Cashman regional final was not Torres against Severino.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait.
Just because really, like, who's on Twitter nowadays? It's like it's the younger generation on Twitter nowadays. Do you think they remember what Java Chamberlain was like? No, they don't. So there's gonna be some bias there. I think we're gonna end up with the Glaber Torres and Luis Severino.
And let's remember that we didn't really set a criteria because it could be however you view it. Could it be you liked watching him as a prospect more? Could it be that he's your favorite guy? There's no criteria here. So it's really, I just want to make it as a distraction. I understand people, I think somebody asked me on Twitter, like, how you're voting. You can vote however you want. There's not really a set criteria that has to
it up a little bit.
Vote for. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why I think if you were a big fan of Java Chamberlain, go vote for him. That keeps him in. But that'll be interesting. Let's get to the Oppenheimer region, because that's who the Cashman region winner will face in our proverbial Final Four. The top seed Aaron Judge takes on the 5 seed James Caprillion, and Tyler Austin is like that 2 seed that got a bad draw. Blame the selection committee, Tyler Austin, because you have to face Jason Dominguez.
Yeah.
As much as I remember, Tyler Austin and Aaron Judge came up and hit back-to-back home runs in their debuts, and we all remember that. But Tyler Austin. I'm going to pull up the numbers here while you talk about it, James. But I want to give Tyler Austin a little bit more love because Dominguez is going to make that upset into the regional final here.
Yeah, I'm not going to give Tyler Austin all that much love. I was never a Tyler Austin fan. Sorry, Tyler, it just wasn't. But Jason, the phenomenon, Jason Dominguez here, that nothing is taking that down other than Aaron Judge. And if Dominguez takes down Judge, I'm going to question the credibility of the voters because Dominguez has yet to play a game. So let's not. I put him over Tyler Austin. Tyler Austin, I was not all that excited about. Even when he came up and hit that home run, you just kind of sensed that there was a difference between Tyler Austin and Aaron Judge, just in presence. And is that because Judge was 6'7" and hitting ball 700 feet, maybe? But you could tell kind of one was the lead, and one would kind of, you just didn't know about him. The one you just didn't know about was Tyler Austin. So expecting Jason Dominguez to take over Tyler Austin. And with Judge and Caprillion, little throwback here. Remember when Judge hit that home run in Anaheim? It was in 2017. And James Caprillion was behind home plate in Anaheim with his hands in the air going nuts for Aaron Judge. So there's a little incentive for that matchup there.
Tyler Austin and his career AAA numbers, because we'll go off that, 274, 40 homers, 140 RBI. Not the greatest numbers, of course, over 200 games. It was you go to that Yankee early prospect group, and it was really, again, Tyler Austin got that bad draw here, I think. But Dominguez should win this one, even though, again, he hasn't played a game, but that's why we seeded him lower in the bracket, because you can't justify a top 4 seed for somebody who hasn't played. So whoever got Dominguez was really going to grab the short end of the stick, so to speak. Caprillion, I think I like that he got. I think beating Mateo was interesting. It could have gone either way, but this is one where you had that buzzer beater in the 4-5, and the winner of that just runs out of gas. That's going to be the case here. Aaron Judge should roll over, which would set up again Judge versus Dominguez, and that could be again the fan vote could come into play because your love for Dominguez could go to you're not really high on Judge because of all the injuries right now. But that's an unfair way to vote, but I could see fans thinking that way.
That happens. There's serious issues with this thing. Because, they're just, come on. Haven't played a game yet. Love all the Jason Dominguez side, but, dude, if he beats Aaron Judge in this poll, we're gonna have to talk as a committee about the format of the structure. Just what went wrong here. But I guess that's the idea of March Madness. I don't know. That's
I'll get the committee on speed dial. I know the committee. We'll get into that. Finally, the second round is confirmed. The Afterman region, and these are two very interesting matchups. You have Gary Sanchez, the 1 seed, against the 5 seed Estevan Florial, and a blast from the past against the current young Yankee, Miguel Andujar, the 2 seed, against Phil Hughes, the 3 seed. I think Andujar versus Hughes could come down to the wire here.
I don't know. I don't think so. And that's only because Miguel Andujar, people are just completely infatuated by his bat. Although Hughes was good, man. He was good. He played a pretty big role in that 09 team in the bullpen. So, I don't know. It's close. It might be close. It might not be. But I think, again, the recency bias here is going to push Andujar over the top there. And Sanchez Florial, it's gonna be. I don't know. I'm struggling with that one a little bit. I was just about to say it's definitely gonna be Gary Sanchez, but you got to remember, people freaking hate Gary Sanchez on Twitter. They absolutely hate him. So would I be surprised to see Florial overtake him? Yes, but would I be surprised to see it closer than most people expect? No.
That reminds me of Florial's that team that when you get into the second round that gives the 1 seed a run for their money until about halftime, and then the 1 seed starts to pull away. That's the system of March Madness, man. You bet the underdog to cover first half, then you bet the favorite to cover the second half. That's just kind of how it works in the open rounds of March Madness or whatever. Going back to Hughes, looking at his one big year in the minors that he got fully as a starter, 26 starts between Tampa and Trenton in 06, 12-6, 2.16 ERA, 168 strikeouts to 34 walks, over 146 innings, and he allowed just 5 home runs with a batting average against the 179.
Now Hughes was good, man. He was good, and I think it might be a little closer than I expect, just because again, I have some recency bias with Miguel Andujar. I love Miguel Andujar's bat. So yeah, it might be closer than I expected.
Does Phil Hughes see this on Twitter and start to get people to vote for him, though?
If we tag him enough, maybe. I think we should do it. That's a good idea.
It'll be interesting. So that would be a good matchup in the Robin region. Right now, it looks like the top seed, Jesus Montero, is going to advance, and the 2 seed, Dylan Betances, is going to advance. And we talked about this last week, James. I would think Betances is the favorite to come out of this bracket as the top 2 seed to make the Final Four here.
Yeah, the favorite, but I don't think I'd be surprised to see Montero overtake him. Just because of Montero, remember the hype surrounding Jesus Montero?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, would you be surprised to see him? Would you really be all that surprised for him to overtake Dylan Betances?
I kind of would.
Really?
Because I think you also remember we talked about how you said people hate some of the families hates Gary Sanchez. I feel like some people hate Montero for being that much of a bust.
Well, what about? Do you think there might be a little bit of bad taste in some fans' mouth for Dylan Betances becoming a Met? So that might play a factor.
Yeah, I don't go there because remember at the time one of his favorite players was the manager of the Mets. So if you didn't see that one coming.
He had a great tenure with the Mets, man. I'm surprised they let him go. Talking about that former manager they had over there.
So that's your setup for Pinstripe Prospect Madness. Again, go on to Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Cast your vote for who you want to see win the matchup. Next week, we'll recap the second round, and we'll look ahead a little bit to the regional finals if they have not been played yet. We'll see how it goes throughout the week. I'll try to set it up to where the regional finals will start next week. We'll kind of look into that on next Tuesday's show. So let's get into some Major League stuff real quick. Of course, we got to talk about Aaron Judge because there never seems to be a week where we don't have Aaron Judge news. Last Friday, Aaron Judge told reporters down in Tampa that the fractured rib was getting better, but he had a partially collapsed lung. Unfortunately, the Yankees, that was never made public, but so far the collapsed lung for Judge is gone. He just has to work on the bone healing for him in the fractured rib. You mentioned it, James, a little bit top of the show. It sounds like if and when we have a season, Aaron Judge should be back or close to being back, but it's just another injury added on to everything.
I'm so freaking confused where this came from. I don't know how I missed this. For those of you who don't know, and that's all of you who are listening right now, I just found out about this before the show. I had no idea. I don't know how I missed it, but I just somehow did. Quarantine, I don't know. I could use a million excuses. But what? For the training staff is kind of leaving a bad enough taste in the mouth of the fans just because it seems like they were incompetent last year. I get it's tough to kind of group them together because it is a training staff this year. But just the overall feel of the Yankees training staff in general, like you kind of feel a little betrayed that this wasn't put out there. At this point, like, is it really going to matter if you tell us about Aaron Judge's collapsed lung? Like, people are negative already. They expect the worst already. So you might as well just tell us the freaking worst. Like, it's like, why hide anything? We've experienced a million injuries to this point. We lost Luis Severino for the entire year. So we weren't going to lose Judge for the – unless we were. I don't know. Unless I thought, like, maybe this collapsed lung thing was going to be a problem for the entire season. But even then, that's still not an excuse. Like, why did we not hear about this? That's my biggest thing.
We promised James was not watching marble racing instead of keeping up with Aaron Judge news.
Yeah, I'm like completely stunned that I missed that. I never miss anything at all. When I tell you anything at all, I never miss a thing. The fact that I miss Aaron Judge having a collapsed lung, I'm so like disappointed in myself.
Let me give the Yankees somewhat of benefit of the doubt here, because Aaron Judge has to tell the Yankees that it's okay for this to come out, because the Yankees can't just come out and say Aaron Judge has this without Judge's permission. So that could be on Aaron Judge for not saying something, or maybe they did a test and sometimes you find out something after the fact. I don't want to compare myself to a professional player because I'm not, but like I found out after like when I was like 13 years old when I broke 2 bones in my forearm that I found out, oh yeah, you broke your wrist too, but the pain in your forearm was able to hide that you broke your wrist. So sometimes you find out after the fact in some cases. So I'm not going to go totally on the Yankee training staff here because, again, that could be something you find out after the fact and maybe something the Judge doesn't want to make public at that particular time.
Don't hate that reasoning. If that's the case, if it's like something that came up after, if some Judge didn't want to say, even that, that doesn't sit well in my mouth. The Judge doesn't want to tell people he has his injury. I get if it was like something like where there's an underlying issue that could be like devastating to him in general, just like his general health. But if something's going to like heal eventually and they told him it's going to heal, like why not want to put that out there? I don't know. I can't get in the mind of Aaron Judge. I won't try to. But yeah, with the injury, I guess it seems like it's healing, but what do you believe here? What like, do you really trust anything? Like, what should we believe? Should we believe this thing's healing? This guy can be ready for opening day whenever it happens? I don't know. I hope so. I'm optimistic.
Well, the big thing now is the rib. I think that's the one you're more focused on because the partially collapsed lung is healed. The thing you also have to remember is the Judge injury happened in September. So does Aaron Judge want to take himself out of the lineup in October? Unless something's completely wrong. So that also plays in a factor like, I want to play in the postseason. I'm going to do everything I can to play.
Right. But apparently he didn't find out about this injury until like 6 months after the fact that he suffered it. So I guess you could kind of rule that out, right?
It kind of feeds Aaron Judge into the Yankees with most to prove in a way when the season eventually starts. And it's not from a statistical standpoint because we know Aaron Judge can hit. We know how great he is in the field. We know his arm. It's more and more to prove, like, stay on the field. Like, that's really what he has to prove in a way.
Well, it seems like we're transitioning to the topic of the top Yankees and most to prove. And Judge is probably number 2 on my list, at least, because just with the uncertainty of the injuries, this is a guy that people think is the next Yankee captain. And it's time for him to show us that. I've been an Aaron Judge fan since he came up. I I supported whatever has gone on with him. I always thought he was an elite player, top whatever in the game. Always defended him. But it's time to kind of show out here. I get you can't really help the injury, some of these injuries, like getting hit in your hand or diving for I don't know. But it really is time for Judge to kind of show us what we saw in 2017 again.
I'm guessing the one ahead of Judge is a guy on the Yankees who's similarly tall, doesn't stay on the field either.
Yep.
Sometimes strikes out. Yeah, that
sure
guy.
Is. Yep, sure is. Just like, I mean, that's it's obvious. If Giancarlo Stanton stinks again this year, well, not stinks again, just can't stay on the field. If he has a disappointing year, it's going to be a long 9 years. It's 9 years remaining on his contract, including this year, right? Isn't it 9? Do we have a stat check on that? It's something like
that.
It's going to be a long, long tenure if Giancarlo Stanton turns out to be Jacoby Ellsbury, because it's one thing for Jacoby Ellsbury to kind of stink because he was making what, like $20 million a year, and the Yankees were, didn't really need him, so to speak, because that was just a poor signing. But the Yankees definitely need Giancarlo Stanton to be Giancarlo Stanton. And there's no doubt about that. So if that, and all the hype that he was the NL MVP and his first $300 whatever $million player and the largest contract, him won the bright lights. If he doesn't show out this whatever, if he can't stay healthy for 80 games or 90 games or however many games we're going to play this year, it's going to be really bad for him. And he is by far the number one Yankee with the most improved, just because of all that stuff that I just mentioned.
And Aaron Boone told Meredith Barakovitz earlier this week, I actually believe it was yesterday, or at least Brian Hoke tweeted it, but the interview was a day or so ago, that if spring training games started up the next day, Stanton would be ready to go. So that's at least a good sign that Giancarlo Stanton, barring something happening between now and whenever the season starts, will be in the lineup ready to go. And you don't have to worry about him missing games right now.
But rightfully so, man. Like, you strained your calf doing outfield drills. Like, that freak things happen, but freak things happen too often here. I'm not going to yell at him for having injuries, but, I mean, someone's got to figure something out. And this can't just keep happening. I know you see, people with injuries all the time and just ruin their careers, but something just has to be figured out. He has a strained muscle every other day. Something strained. He's on an anti-gravity treadmill. He's on this. He's on that. I know it sounds like I'm fed up with Giancarlo Stanton, and I'm getting there, but I'm not there yet. I'm still giving him a shot. I'm not going to completely give up on him, but it's getting close if he has either A, a poor 2020 season, or B, no 2020 season at all because of his injuries.
Looking at the other Yankees that could make this list, I feel like, James, a lot of them are hitters. And you look at the pitchers, the one that would have a lot to prove, it's out with Tommy John surgery. So that kind of throws. I mean, if I'm looking,
you could also throw in Garrett Cole because like $324 million, but I'm not going to put him on there yet. He doesn't have most. Like, do you say he has to prove his $324 million contract his first year in New York? No, you don't. So you could argue. I could listen to an argument for Garrett Cole, but I would. They're all bats, man. You're right. Most of them, they're all bats.
Let me throw a pitcher out there. Contract year, James Paxton.
The most approved? Do you think he falls under that category? Because I think he did prove in the sense that
he started to
that he could be an elite arm. But
he ended the year well.
Yeah,
I feel like you want to see him do it for. Yeah, he want to see him do it from start to finish.
Agreed, but he doesn't have all that much pressure on him because he's. Well, actually, no. We don't have Luis Severino, so he is the number 2. But he's not the ace. Like last season, he was the number 1 for most of the year, and he was the guy that you would depend on every fifth day to go out there and win. I remember the whole Domingo Germán fiasco with all that stuff, but he was the guy, man. So and I think he did a relatively good job of proving that last year. So I wouldn't put him on that list. But I could hear an argument for him, but he wouldn't be on my list.
The only argument I have for him for the pitchers would be, well, like you said with Cole, you can't really go out and prove a $324 million unless you either A, win a World Series, B, go 26-2 with like a sub-1 ERA, which you're not going to
Right.
do unless you play MLB The Show and you're on some easy level, but that ain't going to happen. Masahiro Tanaka, but you already know what Tanaka is.
No,
So
yeah, no.
J
If there's
J
one guy that has
Happ,
nothing
there's
to
no
prove,
expectations for because he's the back rotation guy anyway. It's really if you're going up that middle ground, and really in the bullpen, you really know what you're getting from most of the guys in the pen in all likelihood. So to me, it just packs them by default in my mind, at least pitching wise.
yeah. If you said before, if there's one guy that has nothing to prove whatsoever, it's Masahiro Tanaka. I mean, that's just where I stand with him. Like he has nothing to prove, man. That guy is a clutch pitcher. You know he's gonna get. He's not gonna be the best regular season pitcher, but he is gonna be the best postseason pitcher. That's for damn sure. You want that guy out on the mound in a pressure situation. Um, but arms, I guess it is. It's Paxton has the most pressure, or the most to prove in a sense. But like, I still wouldn't like. I'm not going to season thinking like, man, if James Paxton doesn't do this, then what? Like you traded Justice Sheffield for him, then you just let him walk. So what? So I'm not. Yeah, Paxton's not on my list, but he would. I guess he'd be the most realistic of the arms.
But if you go off that logic also, and we talked about Jesus Montero earlier, then Michael Pineda really had nothing to prove because you traded away Jesus Montero, who's a bust anyway.
I guess, but Michael Pineda never had a good, never had like a true impact on the Yankees. You understand? Like he never had like that
Yeah.
impact on the Yankees that kind of Paxton did last year, where he showed up in the big game once in a while. Like he pitched a great game against the Astros in the ALCS to keep the Yankees alive. I think he's really left it all out. I think there's no more questions really asked about James Paxton. You know you're not gonna get a 200 guy. He's gonna have his injury, and he's gonna be around a 3.5, and he's gonna have his runs of dominance. He's gonna have his runs of inconsistency. But that's just I think everyone knows who James Paxton is.
But can you afford those inconsistencies? And I'm a Paxton fan. I'm not trying to hate on the guy. Can you afford those inconsistencies in a shorter season?
You can because you have Garrett Cole again, and you have so many arms. Like we forget like how just I guess because with the time off, you guys have a lot of talented arms, man. Jordan Montgomery looked freaking good in spring training. Tanaka is Tanaka. The Yankees last year got away with Domingo Germán being their ace pitcher, and that was with Paxton struggling. This time around, we got Garrett Cole here as the ace pitcher. So you can deal with those inconsistencies because you have that guy on the mound every fifth day, and you know he's going to dominate. So I guess you can deal with it more so now than you did last year. And the Yankees didn't deal with it last year. They dealt with it, and they won 103 games.
So we mentioned Stanton and Judge being the top two. Who falls just behind them for you?
Luke Voit.
Okay.
I'm a Luke Voit guy. I think I've said that before. I think he can really, really hit. But people have this fascination with Mike Ford that he's his lefty bat, he's got the pop, this and that. I'm not buying the Mike Ford stuff, but Luke Voit does have a lot to prove because he went on that tear in 2018, and then 2019 he was on a tear, and then he got hurt. And people kind of, I think I said it when we first started this podcast, people forgot just who Luke Voit was and just for what he does, like what he does. It's time for him to remind people that because that dude can hit, and he's number 3 for me.
Voit would be, I think, definitely in a top 5 conversation. To me, I think another one as we wrap up the segment would be Gio Urshela, just to prove that it's not a fluke year, and I think he could be good. It's unfair to expect him to have a great season like he did on Gio Urshela standards last year. But you have to think, can he do it again? You still have, while Miguel Andujar was doing pretty good in the outfield, you have to wonder still, is Gio Urshela that guy at third base going forward? I mean, that's still a question, although you would think he's going to have a good year. It's just I think, tough to expect him to duplicate last season.
And I think, as kind of we wrap up here, I think the next guy that we kind of talk about here, Miguel Andujar, is number 5. Just because it seems like the Yankees are doing a whole lot to keep him relevant. They're putting him in the outfield, they're trying him here, trying him there because of his bat. And if his bat flakes, then what are you doing trying all this nonsense for with him in left field and at first base and wherever else? So he's got to be number 5. And I even argue I'd put him ahead of Urshela because you know you're going to get a great glove out of Urshela. You don't know if you're not getting Miguel Andujar's hitting, you're not getting anything out of Andujar.
So that'll be some storylines to follow when the season actually gets underway. We'll hope we'll get some news on that.
God willing, it's soon.
Pretty soon. I mean, you would think their deadline was supposedly it's not going to happen. But was supposedly first week, like April 8th, April 9th. They're going to obviously change that. So down the road, we'll see what changes come out of all this going forward. I think my final thought, at least for this week, no Olympics this year. That also got postponed to next year. Baseball is going to be in the Tokyo Olympics. So you're also going to have next year, too, the World Baseball Classic and the Olympics. So you get two international competitions. I think that I'm a fan of the World Baseball Classic. I know people hate on it because it's during spring training, and why do big-time athletes want to play in this thing? It doesn't really count for anything except if you want to wear the Team USA uniform. But I enjoyed it. I know Israel had a great run the last time it was in. I think I saw Ian Kinsler's playing for Team Israel next year, which could be really cool. But I enjoy it. And international competition, I think, is going to be fun, especially if they allow you to have players that maybe aren't on the 40 or on that how that eligibility works. But you could get some really. I remember when the U.S. was trying to qualify for the Olympics, they had a really fun team. Like Joe Adele was on it, and so getting a chance to see these young guys play internationally again, and it was the right decision. You had to postpone the Olympics till next year. But to get baseball back into it, I think it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I guess my final thought, there's not much to really think about right now to talk about, but really once we get out of this thing, and we are going to get out of this thing, everyone stay positive. This isn't the end. We're going to get out of this. And once we do get out of it, we're going to hit one of the craziest sports runs that we've ever hit. We're going to have basketball in the summer or whatever, baseball starting, football just about to start. You have golf majors starting whenever. It's going to be crazy. Just like that. If you really need something to look forward to and to kind of get you through this, once we get out of this on the other side, there's going to be havoc, and it's going to be the good type of havoc, not what we're experiencing now.
Yeah, I thought about this while I've been upset the sports aren't back. There's going to be so many sports and not enough channels.
Yeah,
I feel like
right now there's nothing like at all. Just think about the contest. What's going to happen when we get out of this? You know,
like you think about September, like the first week you'd have likely baseball, college football starting. The Kentucky Derby, I believe, is like the first week in September.
Yeah. The Masters
could be in October.
Oh yeah.
You have postseason baseball and the CBS take the Masters and NFL. Like that's going to be it. Like the amount of TV options.
Nothing overdoes the Masters. Nothing will overdo the Masters. If it does, I riot. So CBS better take the Masters over. What doesn't ESPN usually take some of the Masters?
ESPN takes the first, second round. So my guess would be that if you go off that ESPN would have the final round of the Masters and CBS have the NFL, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, no way. The Masters. Everyone watches the Masters, at least the final rounds. So I mean, they're not, regardless of what happens there with football and whatever. The Masters is going to be there.
So we want to thank you all again for tuning in to episode 8 of season 2 of the Pinstriped Prospects podcast. We enjoyed it again. Hope you enjoyed it as well. You can follow us on Twitter at Pinstripe Pros. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Instagram. Feel free to call on our voicemail number if you want to just give your thoughts on anything Yankees related. 908-376-6360. Again, 908-376-6360. Subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Give us a rating. We hope it's 5 stars. We want to hear your feedback, so please share that with us. You also subscribe Spotify, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcast. We're on it. James, how can they follow you on Twitter? And I know you'll probably be talking about reruns that air on NBC of golf tournaments, but let us know.
You can follow me on Twitter at O'ConnellNY. Honestly, not really talking about much right now because what is there to talk about? It's a whole lot of Netflix being watched, a whole lot of video games being played, a whole lot of schoolwork being done, and no sports, man. There's nothing to talk about. So yeah, you can give me a follow on my boring Twitter account right now. I just told you there's nothing to talk about at O'Connell NY.
See, for me, I know Tiger rerun was on this week, so like I would tune in a little bit for that, but really,
It was the Valsar Championship 2018. I think that's been on the Golf Channel recently, but yeah.
But you can follow me on Twitter at Rickinator555. You can also follow my other show, Kicking It with Keeler, on Full Press Radio. We got a good show coming up this week. We're gonna have somebody. I'm gonna get his name real quick so I can get it right. It is Steve Luvender. He writes on NASCAR.com. There was a cool event happened on Fox Sports 1 over the weekend. They did like a virtual racing where like Denny Hamlin and Dale Earnhardt Jr. were like driving a simulator, and it looked like a video game, but at the same time like an actual NASCAR race. So we're going to get Steve's thoughts on that, how that came together, the whole iRacing thing, because we need some sports to talk about. So that'll be on my show Thursday. I'm also doing like your favorite unsung heroes. We talk about how the medical teams and all that have been the great heroes during this pandemic. And if you work in retail, like the grocery stores, or if you're an essential worker helping everybody through this time, and thank you for those services if you are. I always think that James interesting, like unsung hero, like who's that guy that just came out of nowhere you didn't expect? Like if you go off the Yankee lore, probably be like a Jim Leyritz.
Right.
But like just the guy that like Shane Spencer, those late 90s teams, like somebody who just came out of nowhere and had that big hit, like that just surprised everybody.
Is that a what do you
if you have one off, I'm not going to expect you to have one off the top of your head, but I just want to throw that out for the listener. Like if you come up with one, feel free to tweet it at me as well. But that's always fun to hear the surprise names that, like, at least for me in basketball, be like Robert Horry.
Right. I really don't have one off the top of my head. Kind of stumped me there.
Yeah, it was expected, but you could definitely. We'll try to do that on this week's Kicking It with Keeler again on Full Press Radio. So thanks to all of you that tuned in this week. Follow Yankees Pinstriped Prospects Madness. It's fun. Go out there and vote. We'll have an update on that next week and talk about some more minor league baseball and some more Yankees updates. So until then, thanks for tuning in to the Pinstriped Prospects podcast. Stay safe. Stay inside unless you really have to go somewhere. And we'll see you back here next week. Thanks for tuning in.
Later.